Welcome to Peak Report. Here are today's top stories. On the 643rd day of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg issued a stern warning, emphasizing the imperative for the West to continue supporting Ukraine. Despite the prolonged conflict and the military's recapture of 50% of the terrain gained by the Russian army, Stoltenberg underscores the need for unwavering support. Acknowledging Ukraine's military achievements and the sacrifices endured, Stoltenberg points out Germany and the Netherlands' recent commitments to provide military aid totaling at least 10 billion euros. Despite concerns about potential U.S. military assistance, Stoltenberg cites these pledges as evidence of the continuing strength of Western support. Acknowledging Ukraine's military achievements and the sacrifices endured, Stoltenberg points out Germany and the Netherlands' recent commitments to provide military aid totaling at least 10 billion euros. Despite concerns about potential U.S. military assistance, Stoltenberg cites these pledges as evidence of the continuing strength of Western support. Highlighting the upcoming NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, Stoltenberg assures that, despite the ongoing conflict in Israel and Hamas, the conference will address and reaffirm NATO's support for Kyiv. While facing criticism, Washington asserts its commitment to long-term support for Ukraine, with ongoing discussions and potential obstacles from Republicans. The unpredictable outcome of the Washington meeting remains uncertain, with weather disturbances affecting the annexed Crimea Peninsula and southern Russia. A superstorm with colossal waves and strong winds adds an additional layer of challenges to the already complex situation in the region.
In a recent development, Israel and Hamas have agreed to extend the ongoing ceasefire by an additional 2 days. Both parties are pursuing further negotiations as a result of this extension, which Qatar and Egypt brokered. With only 12 hours remaining until the potential resumption of hostilities, the mediators, Qatar and Egypt, hastily left the negotiations. As part of the agreement, Israel has consented to the release of 10 additional detainees daily. On Monday, Israel confirmed the liberation of 11 more detainees held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip, including 3-year-old twins. This brings the total number of detainees released under the truce to 50 members of the Israeli fleet. In reciprocal action, Hamas is set to transfer 10 more hostages today. Notably, Hamas had captured around 240 detainees on October 7, along with 19 hostages of other nationalities. The release of 11 Israeli detainees has led to the liberation of 33 Palestinian women and 33 children from Israeli custody. The scenes in Ramallah, West Bank, captured on camera depict Palestinians applauding and cheering as the bus carrying the released detainees passes through the streets. Meanwhile, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken is preparing for his third trip to West Asia since the onset of the Hamas-Israel conflict. His upcoming visit will include destinations in the West Bank and Israel. The White House emphasizes that the extension of the ceasefire is contingent on Hamas releasing its hostages. During his visit, Blinken is expected to address the guiding principles for a post-conflict Gaza. Discussions between U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and his Israeli counterpart Yoav Gallant covered topics such as the recovery of hostages and the operations of Israeli defense forces in Gaza. Additionally, Austin updated Gallant on U.S. security assistance to Israel and reiterated the need for increased humanitarian aid to Gaza. Humanitarian aid vehicles are queued along the Israel-Egypt border, awaiting inspection by Israel before entering the Gaza Strip. Despite these efforts, the Chief of Staff of the United Nations asserts that the aid being delivered is insufficient to sustain the inhabitants of Gaza. In an unrelated event, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, held discussions with President Isaac Herzog and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, following an antisemitism controversy. The Israeli president emphasized Musk's crucial role in preventing antisemitism. Musk accompanied Prime Minister Netanyahu on a tour of a kibbutz that Hamas specifically targeted in the attack on October 7. In international affairs, North Korea claims to have comprehensive images of the White House, the Pentagon, and U.S. nuclear aircraft carriers from its recent satellite launch. The successful launch of its military reconnaissance satellite, Maoyang-1, has raised concerns, leading to discussions at the United Nations Security Council. North Korea has resumed sending representatives to Security Council meetings on its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The United States issued a nuclear threat against Pyongyang during these meetings. Meanwhile, a dispute over the status of Parthian sculptures has allegedly led British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to cancel a scheduled meeting in London. In Niger, prominent figures successfully reversed legislation that criminalized the transportation of migrants within the nation. The law, in effect for 8 years, allowed authorities to prosecute traffickers involved in transporting migrants to Europe and Libya. In Sierra Leone, a partial lifting of a curfew has occurred in the capital Freetown, where daily activities have resumed under heavy security presence. An assault on military facilities and prisons led to the deaths of 20 individuals and the escape of nearly 2,000 detainees, causing chaos in the West African nation. In Lima, dozens gathered in the streets to demand the removal of the Attorney General amid allegations of involvement in a corruption investigation. There are allegations that Attorney General Patricia Benavides and her staff exerted undue influence over the actions of the United States Congress. Turning to climate-related news, floods and severe snowstorms are impacting Russia, causing disruptions in Moscow and other areas. Moscow experienced the heaviest November snowfall in 40 years, while the southern region faced inundation, leading to evacuations and infrastructure damage. Floods are also presenting significant challenges in Kenya, with damaged bridges and roads leaving residents stranded. The Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research recommends reducing greenhouse gas emissions to address the increasing frequency and intensity of torrential precipitation, particularly in vulnerable areas. At the COP20 summit, methane's impact on global warming will be a significant topic. The UAE has urged the oil and gas industry to eliminate methane emissions by 2030 in preparation for COP28. In contrast, Saudi Arabia has revealed a strategy to induce developing nations to become dependent on oil and gas, emphasizing increased adoption of vehicles propelled by fossil fuels. 70 former world leaders have formed a coalition supporting a $25 billion levy on oil-producing nations, with proceeds intended for developing nations affected by climate-related catastrophes. Environmentalists in Paris mounted a demonstration near the Eiffel Tower, urging COP member states to levy taxes on fossil fuel companies to compensate for losses and damages. These diverse events underscore the complex and interconnected nature of global affairs, ranging from regional conflicts and diplomatic negotiations to climate-related challenges and international efforts to address them.